topics now. So this is basically the reason I invited you on just out of the blue was on Twitter I saw your comment about this new show, this new sci-fi comedy show from Seth MacFarlane, creator of Family Guy and like The Cleveland Show and American Dad and a few movies he's done. A Million Ways to Die in the West was pretty interesting, kind of stupid but funny.
You go. It's like interesting is a good way to put that, but probably more appropriate.
Yeah, so Seth MacFarlane, new show. People are wondering, okay, is this going to be, fart jokes and Peter Griffin humor again, or is it, what is this thing? It's clearly a parody of Star Trek. So what I'll do now is put up the trailer. I'm going to play the trailer here, just so you guys have some reference. This is not, wow, apparently the YouTube video was playing the entire time we were talking, and it's now 10 videos further. Thanks. Now it's Seth MacFarlane and Charlize Theron on Ellen talking about the Orville, I guess.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. All right. Give me just a second, guys. So XSplit has this cool thing that I actually just discovered the other day where you can actually copy-paste a URL from YouTube directly onto XSplit, just onto the scene, and it will make its own little pop-up player. So that is extremely handy for media like this.
That's cool.
All right, so we'll watch this ad together for 2 more seconds. Okay, so here's the trailer, guys.
Cool. There's a ship available. An exploratory vessel, the USS Orville. And we're offering you command.
You kidding? That's not bad, right?
No, it's good. Paint some flames on the side, and maybe like a rainbow unicorn. You got something.
Engage quantum drive.
We need protection.
Protection from what?
The krill.
You will die.
There's no way we're gonna be out by 5 today, are we?
You want to open this jar of pickles for me? I loosened it for you.
We're out on the edge of the frontier of explored space. That doesn't excite you?
Boom, bitch!
The Orville premieres Sunday, September 10th on Fox.
Cool.
All right, well, that's the trailer. That's the gist there. It's Seth MacFarlane's Star Trek, essentially. So the third episode actually just aired on Sunday. We're 3 episodes in now, and Rev, you had some opinions on it. Why don't you just tell us like your initial thoughts about the show and like how you're feeling about it now?
The first thing is you called it a parody, and a lot of people are calling it a parody. But I'd like to think at this point it's Seth MacFarlane's homage to Star Trek: The Next Generation. He really, really, really likes it, and I believe at some point he was actually on, I think, Star Trek Enterprise, the TV show, as like a half-second extra or something like that. He really likes Star Trek, and I think mostly The Next Generation. So this was really his send-up to that. To that end, I think he gets a lot of what The Next Generation was trying to do, and he gets it right. They're trying to get those different, you get all those social things that people are talking about and what Star Trek does, and tries to deal with those in certain ways, especially with this last episode talking about gender and dealing with all that, because that's a huge thing right now, especially in the U.S. And so it was kind of interesting to see their take on it. And I really do enjoy the fact that they're going through this with all these different characters that they have, and I really enjoy that. And it's kind of fun to see Seth MacFarlane essentially like live action role playing Star Trek. Now, the thing that I really am not cool with on this show, and it's really kind of biting my ass at this point, because some people don't seem to have as much of an issue about it, is the fact that the show is constantly referring to like the 80s and 90s pop culture. And I'm just not really cool with that, because the show's like in, I don't know, the 24th century, or 2352 or something really random like that. And no, actually I'm looking on the Wikipedia right now. It's on the 25th century, so in the 2400s.
Right.
And why do people know 500-year-old like references to things? Like, I didn't need to skip. Yeah, like when she's quoting Beyonce and stuff like that, or we see a Kermit the Frog. I just don't think that maybe one person on the entire ship might be like a history buff that is going in through those, like maybe like Sandra Bullock was in Demolition Man. But you don't need all of that. And that's the kind of the part that kind of chaps my hide for this, because it takes me out of it. It's supposed to be a space show dealing with space things in the far future, and yet we're stuck with, you know, Beyonce and Kermit the Frog references, and it's really annoying at that point.
Well, it's interesting because that's Family Guy's entire motif, right, is just making pop culture references over and over and over with these cutaways, and just absurd ones at that. So these are more cutaways, basically, is how it feels, basically.
I was hoping that it wouldn't be that. When the first episode really didn't have that, but it was also a pilot. You got to like
Get
show
the
all
exposition.
exactly, and you got to show as many characters as possible to figure out which ones, like, you know, the executives and all that sort of stuff want and all that. So they didn't really have a chance to go with it. So the second and third episodes they have it, and I'm like, I'm not cool with this. And then, you know, it's going to keep going, and now I've realized at this point that's going to be how the show is going to be. But beyond that, I don't have any problems with this show. Beyond that, I'm trying to make that as small as it really is, not something that makes me want to turn off from it, because I think Seth MacFarlane is really good as Ed Mercer. I think Adrian Palicki as his ex, who is now also his first officer, I think they have a great chemistry. I think they're awesome, and I think like everyone on the show is really, really great. It's just that little small nitpicky sort of thing. And I mean, as a geek, part of the problems a lot of people would have with something are like those little nitpicky things that you're like, are you really going to complain about that? And, yeah, I'm going to complain about it at this point, but it's not stopping me from watching it right now.
Gotcha. So its own humor and writing is overcoming the minor annoyance for you?
Yeah, absolutely. The writing is spot on. The plots, the stories, they're really, I feel that they're really good. And I like the fact that it's not really taking itself completely seriously. It's still very serious, but it's not as serious as Star Trek The Next Generation was. So when there's jokes and there's some of the little inside jokes for Star Trek nerds, I think that's great. I realize that maybe just the 90s references and stuff is to make sure that it's a little bit more inclusive for the non-Star Trek geeks. I just wish it would be a little less on that.
Okay. I mean, I fully understand. I think I actually didn't even realize this show was coming until maybe like 2 weeks before it actually had the first episode. So I was pleasantly surprised just to see, like, I already knew the new Star Trek was on the way, and Star Trek Discovery just had its first 2 episodes air on some CBS service. We'll talk about that in a bit. But like, I knew Star Trek was coming, and I was happy for more sci-fi because I've been watching Dark Matter and The Expanse. And both of those shows, I think, are really good. Dark Matter just got canceled, and it's rumored now that The Expanse is only going to have 1 more season. So I'm like, why? Every time I find a show that I actually like that's set in space, it's down the tubes immediately. And the network shows, those are both on Sci-Fi Channel. Mm-hmm. The network space shows are all awful. Like The 100 for me is like, it was set in space. It's like an alien planet, but it's essentially Lost for preteens is how it feels. It's like it's just kids, like, relationships more than space and sci-fi and stuff like that. And Finks is mentioning Killjoys in the chat. I have not watched it yet, but I've watched the first episode. I'm saving it for rainy day when there's no more sci-fi left on television. But I am happy to have Star Trek Discovery and now this show, the Orville, which I was not expecting. So Seth MacFarlane, I've watched, I'll admit, I've watched every Family Guy, every American Dad, all the Cleveland Show. Like, I'm totally fine with dumb, stoner humor, whatever you want to call it, where it's just like absorbing 20 minutes of one-liners and not really remembering even anything about the episode later. But Mike Henry, who's the voice of Cleveland and like a bunch of other characters in those series, actually came to my college one time to do a stand-up set, and he was doing like requests or like questions to the audience, and I raised my hand and he called on me, and I said, can you do some Shakespeare as Cleveland? And he said, he thought about it for a minute. He's like, nope, I'm too dumb. I don't know any fucking Shakespeare. Next. And I was like,
that's amazing.
I was like, that works. That satisfies me. It was pretty funny. All right. But
yeah,
I was like,
we've talked about Killjoys, Dark Matter, and The Expanse on the podcast.
Okay.
I haven't watched them myself, but BJ, who's a big fan of sci-fi, like he loves the original series of Star Trek with like basically his heart and soul. He loves all of those as well, and I know that he was really sad about the fact that Dark Matter and even The Expanse are just on their have been killed or on their deathbeds.
Yeah. It's rough. It's rough out there for a space TV show, I guess, these days. But I mean, the movies are doing so well. The superheroes are all going to space, and the Star Treks and the whatnots and the wars. Why can't people just watch it on TV too? I feel like it'd be a win-win. Anyway, they just want to see who's getting married for fake on TV all the time. Like that's the big TV draw these days.
I know.
Yeah. see
yeah, my wife watches a lot of The Bachelor. Hey, I've got my own terrible TV that I love to watch, so I'm not going to throw any stones on that. It's definitely not my bag. Yet at the same point, if she's like watching it and I end up being in the same room, I'm just like yelling at the TV. What are you? What's wrong with you?
I've been roped into a lot of bad television via other people watching bad television, so I totally get that. I think actually this is one of the funnier stories. I managed to go all the way through college and all the way through the entirety of Jersey Shore without ever watching an episode. And then I was visiting home for Christmas one year, years later, and my dad is just watching Jersey Shore in the living room at like midnight as I'm like going for a snack. And I was like, "What are you doing, Dad? Like you're like 60 years old. You shouldn't be watching Jersey Shore." He's like, "Oh, just have a seat." He's like, "Just have a seat." I was like, fine, I'll sit and watch and make fun of it with you. And then I was like, I hate you. By the end of the first episode, I was like, I hate this. I can't look away. Like, it's just a train wreck happening constantly. It's like this world's slowest train wreck happening.
To bring everything together, one of my old radio interns, she was actually on the show. She was her name is Annabelle, and she ended up actually insulting the situation because she didn't want to out with him, and so she got a blast on like TMZ and stuff for calling him an old man and some other things like that. And that was the only time that I watched the Jersey Shore was when there was actually someone I knew on it, because beyond that, there's no way.
Yeah. Okay, so to bring it back to the Orville, since that is the original topic.
Yeah.
What do you think about the fact I've seen? Okay, so actually, this last episode was getting a lot of praise on my social media, like from fellow nerds. They were saying that this, the first two episodes were very like, one was exposition. The second episode was kind of weird because it was mostly just Seth MacFarlane and the first commander having a weird situation, giving a little exposition to that conflict that they had as a couple. And then, the newbiness of the first command, Alora, something like that. So this episode was the first one. Yeah, this is the first one that actually had like a plot that was like, what is the show actually going to be like? Is it going to be episodic or series arc? And this one, it connects from the previous episode where Bortus was laying the egg, but I don't think it's going to be a continued arc from here. Like the baby will probably be mentioned now and again, but it's not going to be the focus anymore. It'll be episodic, like they go to different planets. They were saying that this topic, though, was TNG-like. Not so serious, as you mentioned, not so like hand over fist, like punch you in the face with feelings and danger and whatever else, but it's lighthearted conflict, I guess. Do you feel like that it did parallel TNG? Because I'm jumping into Star Trek Discovery because I did not watch any of the previous Star Treks, so I don't really have much to go on as far as a comparison.
Yeah, the Next Generation was it was like 89, I think, to like 94 or 96, somewhere along those lines. So it was definitely in my teen years, and it was the one that I watched a lot of. And it really does ring true. I mean, the show has the look and visuals of the Next Generation, and I had like, even on the first episode, I had the dumbest grin when the ship went into whatever they want to call warp.
Yeah.
And it goes off, and it was a perfect mock-up and mimic of the Next Generation. And they have kept that with these stories, because these are all things that I could definitely see. Maybe not so much on the original series, because, like you said, they're a little more heavy-handed, a little more punchy, so to speak. And there were different issues at the times, but they're tackling things that people are dealing with. And right now with this and dealing with the gender issue, it's a big thing right now. And at that same point, I think that they're doing it really well, and they're able to tackle these social issues in a setting that is interesting for people to watch because it's about space, but then you can also talk about things that are in regards to normal, humankind, I guess, to get those and get the word out and get some sort of opinions and get it out to the masses. And at that point, I think it's doing really, really well. And I hope they keep along those lines because they're also infusing a little bit of humor into it so it doesn't seem so heavy-handed, so it doesn't seem so preachy. And especially in these days with social media and everything, you can get just inundated with people, espousing their own virtues and their own morality onto stuff without giving you a chance to necessarily go back and forth and really think for yourself. And this gives you both ways to look at it. You can see it from both sides. You can see it from what Bortus sees and what everyone else sees, which is like, oh, changing the gender of a child is terrible, as opposed to the other side of their race and the fact that this is their tradition. And why are you trying to ruin a tradition of a place that doesn't have anything that is
it's a mutation or a defect to them.
Yeah,
so it makes sense. And they gave several examples like circumcision and cleft palate for humans, where it's like this is all it is to us. Like literally, we're just fixing the mistake at birth.
Yeah. And I love how they ended it, and spoilers if you haven't watched it, unfortunately. But the fact that
they had time.
Exactly.
The episode aired. We saw it. They can too. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. That's how I'm gonna have to feel about it.
The fact that they provided an argument, and at the beginning the arguments were like they didn't matter because it was like, oh, look at this female who's super powerful, and you're like, well, yeah, but it can be explained away because it's a different alien race.
Clearly a different race. Yeah.
But they did that a couple times, and then they finally, the coup de grace was bringing the person who had all of these great philosophies and is a great writer, and it ended up being a female from this race, and they're like, wow, there's this one that can change everything, and this was the chance, and she would never go back and do that. And that was a really good, heartfelt moment, and, not to be totally cheesy, but I did get a little verklempt about it in the fact that I'm like, okay, they're hitting these in the heart, and they're showing that, but also at the same point, I was really surprised and kind of happy with the fact that, yeah, they fought for this, and they decided, well, this is going to be how we're going to present this case, but ultimately it was for naught.
Right.
Because they decided to be like, no, we're going to do the gender assignment. But then the way Bortus handled it at the end, it was like, yes, I lost the case and I still feel this way, but I'm still going to love my child and give it the best that it can possibly do. And it's that the tolerance that you need on that. Why would you give up the love of your child because something didn't go your way?
Totally. And so I guess to put a pin in it, we're saying, the comedy is enough to overlook the sort of trite sort of callbacks to the 90s and aughts that don't make any sense for the year 2400. It's funny enough, and it's got the subtle, I'll say a subtler approach to some actual real-world topics. This case obviously being the gender assignment of a newborn baby, but I'm sure in the future we'll be seeing more and more topics like that. And I mean, Family Guy always did that too, where it was like gay marriage episode, legalized weed episode, like whatever, bajillion different topics, whatever they decided to poke fun at for 22 minutes. But this is long form content, and it's got serious characters, more or less serious characters in it. So it is interesting to see Seth MacFarlane pull back a little bit from the stupid gags and just kind of try to write conversation. Whereas in Family Guy, the conversations were not really substantial. They were just plot devices to get to the next gag. So it's very interesting. And I mean, like a Seth MacFarlane movie, A Million Ways to Die in the West, I thought it was really funny. So I knew that he had the capability of actually making some long form content that would be entertaining. So I'm happy again to see some more sci-fi. I'm happy to see some more Seth MacFarlane content because honestly, as dumb as it all is, I've watched all of it and I haven't haven't given up on it yet. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Do you think you would give a rating on it, like out of 10 just yet, or would you want to probably watch more episodes? What do you think?
Out of the first 3 episodes, I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I don't feel that it is. If you're not into sci-fi, well, it's just not going to be for you. But if you're into Star Trek and especially the Next Generation, and you're fine with the Seth MacFarlane way, like you said, of putting in those kind of weird sort of ways to go on to things, I think that you'll be fine with it and you may love it. I'm definitely going to be watching this entire season. I want to see how it plots out, and I kind of hope that they're going to give him more of a shot than Fox has normally given most sci-fi things, Firefly and such.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely down for this entire season, and eventually I think I'll get into Star Trek Discovery. At this point, I'm not really into getting CBS All Access just for that. But we'll have to see at that point. I would like to kind of do a compare and contrast at the end of the seasons, just to see how they both are. But I'm definitely enjoying the Orville.
Yeah, and I think we actually touched on Star Trek Discovery's payment model a bit on Monday with Ruben, and we kind of mentioned, just to have like a TLDR, basically this is the growing pains for networks. HBO had the first opportunity to make a bunch of money with Game of Thrones because it was so hard to watch normally, that now other networks are realizing the potential and sort of the models that they can approach this with. But all the TV stations know they have to get off TV quickly. They need to get into digital quickly, and it's going to cost them a shitload of money to do it, and it's going to cost us a lot of money to keep them afloat while they do it. So these next 3 to 4 years, I think we're going to see a lot of models like this pop up for the various networks. But honestly, if you enjoy more than one show on the network, you'll probably find it a good value. If you don't, and you just want to watch one show, you're probably going to be pissed off and torrent it like a normal person. So it's just how it's going to be for the next few years. So all right, well, I think that's all the time you had for today. So I want to thank you very much, obviously, for coming on the show. Is there anything you'd like to give shout-outs or places to find you before you take off today?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way to find me is on Twitter. If you just at Revenfuego, you can see it down on the bottom of the screen right now. I'm always on Twitter and definitely happy to talk about geeky stuff. The podcast is BJ Shea's Geek Nation. You can find that on iTunes or any other place that you get podcasts, but you can also find that at bjgeeknation.com. And then if you're in the Seattle area or beyond, KISW, BJ and Migs Mornings, www.kisw.com, 6 to 10 a.m. on the Pacific, and normally I'm around on usually before about 7 a.m. and at 9 a.m. About 10 minutes before that, I do a game show called Beat Migs. So that's when you can hear me usually getting mad at the hosts.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much for all the discussion there and talking about some radio and some sci-fi. Have a great day, Justin, and we'll have to have you on again sometime.
Absolutely. I love it. Take care, Josh.
All right. See you, man. Okay, that is